Yeah, you too, dude. Absolutely. I had to get that kid. This is in front of that foggy glass. That's kind of a big guy. This is the Sony 35mm f1.8. If you watched my video on MPB versus KEH, I mentioned this lens quite extensively. Not exactly in the best light, but that's not really down to this lens in general. It was just this particular copy. It's still fine. As I said, I'm keeping it, and I bought it mainly for street and for video work like this right here. This is definitely my favorite focal length that I have explored thus far for daytime street. I just love how close you can get with it, but it's not too wide to where it distorts things. I've tried the 28mm range as well, and I find it just a little bit too wide. I think 35 is that perfect in-between spot. What kind of intro would this be if I didn't pop this on the camera so you guys can at least see what it looks like? Let's go ahead and switch to it right now. What do you think? What do you mean it doesn't look different? Let's not go throwing accusations around that I spent too much money on a lens that pretty much looks exactly the same as my other lens. It's f1.8. It's cleaner. I mainly got this for photography anyway. It's a very small lens. As I mentioned a few videos ago when I talked about selling my Lumix gear, I wanted to get something smaller because this is just, it's a bit unwieldy, and especially for daytime, some people just don't take kindly to a giant lens in their face, so I end up staying back a little bit. And you know, sometimes that's okay. I'm not always in the mood to get right up in people's faces. In fact, usually I'm not, but when I am, it's nice to know that I have a camera that I can kind of hide, or at least that's not too intimidating to people when they see it. But anyway, let's jump into the video. Don't forget to keep an eye open for the pug hidden somewhere in this video, because if you are the first person to correctly post the timestamp where it's at, I'll do a backflip in my house. I won't film it, so you'll just have to trust that I did it. I promise. Let's jump into the video. Alright, so here we are in a very unfamiliar location in a mystical land known as Denver, Colorado. This is at Union Station, like always. For some reason, me and Ty always choose to meet up here. It's a nice central location, and I work right next to it, so I get free parking. So as I've said a few times, I think 35mm is my favorite focal length for daytime street. As long as you have balls big enough to get close to people, which, you know, I phase in and out of that sometimes. Some days I feel very comfortable making people mad, and other days I just want to stay back and I just don't really want to engage too much. But when my balls are feeling big, 35mm is just the absolute king. And you know, I've never actually shot street with a 50mm prime. I do have this little Nikon vintage 55mm f1.8 that I'll probably do in the next video, and we'll see how that goes, but it is a manual focus lens, so even if I end up liking that focal length more, it's just going to be a different shooting experience than this. With this Sony 35mm, it works really well on the Sony bodies, and I was just able to basically shoot from the hip, and a lot of the times just use autofocus and it would grab the subject I was looking for. So as usual, those first few were kind of warm-up shots. I mostly just say that so you won't judge me and make me feel like a baby child. But I ended up over here at the first location that I hung out at, and I actually spent a lot of time here this day. I don't normally shoot this spot because it's not very good for nighttime, number one, because what really makes this location pop is the yellow walls and the sun coming in and hitting it. And two, a couple years ago when I first explored this area, this whole downstairs place was filled with junkies, and it just smelled bad, and there was heroin and meth everywhere, so I kind of just put this place out of my mind, but it seems that they cleaned it up quite a bit, and it's looking really awesome now. I really like this one coming up because it's not just two people staring at their phone, but it looks like the blonde woman is sort of pestering the older woman, and the older woman's just kind of like, leave me the fuck alone, bro. I noticed in the edit that this dude was wearing a Peter McKinnon nomadic bag, so we know that he had around $400 at some point in his life. Always be careful when you're out shooting streets. This guy was picking his nose, and if he saw me, there's a very real possibility that he would have flicked a booger at me. I want to just say, I don't really talk about camera settings anymore. Part of me really wants to put the camera settings for each photo in the video on screen, but that is just so much extra work to have to look up all the camera settings for each individual photo. So I don't know. I guess I don't really talk about it because I think it's probably boring to most people, but if you are somebody who would prefer that I mention the camera settings and why I shot them, just let me know in the comments. And if not, tell me to shut the fuck up and that I'm a loser. But either way, just leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. What happens here actually happens quite a bit. So I took this guy's photo, and I didn't realize until later when I was editing these photos that this was the guy that came around and talked to us for a little bit about camera gear.
What camera is that?
A7 IV.
Of course it is.
Yeah, why?
I was just curious. Sorry, no, that's every single person. I worked here for a little while. Every single time someone came in with a camera, there's a 50% chance that it was an A7 IV or that it was anything else. I haven't gotten on to the Sony train yet.
Dude, if you're used to the Canons, just stay with the Canons, man.
Do I get an upgrade to like Sony, or do I get an upgrade to?
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, you're tied to. I had to run past our new friend here because I just knew that this was probably going to be my favorite photo of the day, and I was right. He was up there banging on the glass, almost as if he was a part of the wall and he was climbing up out of it.
So you guys just go around capturing pictures of like moments,
yeah,
lighting and stuff?
Pretty much, yeah, lighting, people, whatever, you know.
Because I'm actually traveling from Cedar Rapids to California, and I had a chance to walk around and check out some of the sites. It's a beautiful city. Yeah, it's a beautiful city, just like the whole vibe. And I was walking around this junction, he's like, "Oh, it's from LA." I go, "Yeah, take a deep breath."
Yeah.
And he's like,
"For real."
Yeah.
You can breathe.
Like, yeah. But like, if you capture a couple other ones of the city, like,
yeah, send them as well.
Yeah, just not a whole blurry, just like, yeah, a couple of them. That way I can print them out, because I'm actually going into a Christian ministry in California.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so it's going to be a minute before I'm actually out. It'll be an opportunity.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Physically, I'll be captive, but spiritually, I'll be able to reawaken and kind of set in a better place.
Kind of eliminate everything outside of,
Yeah, because I was in a relationship. I had four-wheel drive truck, thousands of tools. I had my own apartment, just furnished it, and toxic relationship, and I got it. And so I dropped her off at her aunt's house, and I just took the city bus and just walked away from everything else. I'm sorry, it's yours. Deal with it. Because if I try and hold on to my possessions, I'm going to get into a bad place, and I'm going to lose my possession, and I'm going to lose my freedom. So at least this way, you know, that can be regained, but my freedom can't. That's where I'm at.
Reset.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, bam, reset all the way around. So
You seem happy, man, so that's good, man. Of course, I wish I wasn't an idiot, and I wish I had framed this up properly, but part of me still kind of likes how it breaks the rules of composition and puts him at the very far right edge of the screen.
really cool photo of like.
There we go.
Here's another of my favorites. A lot of times people look up at just the right time and they actually sort of look into the light. I did miss focus on him, but I don't really think it matters. I still think this photo looks great. Ty pointed out this brilliant capture, and if I ever make the cover of a magazine, I'll be sure to include his name.
Like I actually got the turds coming out too.
This is probably another of my favorite compositions. While it isn't strictly street because he knew I was taking his photo and that's what we were out here doing, I still really like it. I love how he just so happened to stand in the perfect position to frame himself between these two beams of light on the inside of the building. This one is what really highlights my love for 35mm. You can get super close, and it's not quite as wide as 28, so you still get just a tiny bit of compression, and that just sort of pulls you into the subject even more. Another one I really like, I just really love when there's kids on people's shoulders. I kind of wish I could have included that older woman to the right to have 3 focal points in this, but somebody walked in front of her at the last second, so I ended up cropping them out a little bit. I tried to run back over and catch this guy in one of these little pockets of light, but unfortunately by the time he got to me, he was kind of in shadow, but still, I love the colors in this. I almost went black and white, but I think the warm tones really suit the whole image overall. Well, that was the last image, y'all. So why don't you go ahead and click the screen right here to check out the last time that I pretended to know what I was doing with a 35mm lens. You're gonna click it. It's right here. Look, if you don't click it, I'm gonna go poopies in my pants. I'm not 100% sure that any of us want that. You might also consider clicking on my face, which is coincidentally where my face is on screen.